everyone. It is your host, Kim Chato, and you're on the Highly Favored Podcast. I am so excited to welcome my amazing Sash sister, my queen, Miss Jaimee Beard. Welcome, Jaimee.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Always. This time last year, we were doing this podcast and we were both prepping to compete in Miss Utah for America Strong. So here we are. And you've had an entire year as your reign. This is so exciting. And I'm about to do this next week and be on stage too.
Who knows?
I know.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe next year we'll do another podcast, but it'll be you this time.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun? That'd be crazy. Okay, yeah. So for our listeners who are new to the Utah America pageant system, new to meeting you for the first time, would love to get to know you a little bit more and maybe this crazy, fun, beautiful pageant system that we're a part of.
Yeah, so last year, Kim and I both competed for the Miss Utah for America Strong title 2025. And I was so blessed to have Kim be my number one girl right next to me as I won. And, you know, thinking about it, I get emotional because I think of that picture, right, that was taken of us hugging. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was 1 year ago. Like saying it out loud is crazy. But yeah, a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Utah. I have traveled and lived outside of Utah, but I've always come back. It's always kind of been my home. So it was truly an honor to represent Utah within this pageant system. And it's really cool because our pageant system, you know, there's no age limit, there's no cutoff, there's no stipulations or rules like it that prevent women of all ages and demographics to compete and to be a part of it. And so I love that. I love that so much. And I love that it's been an opportunity for me to be able to network with other people and have a lot of girlfriends that, you know, in the past, you know, I've been in the dance industry and I've had a lot of teams and a lot of coworkers and companies, but there's nothing like pageantry sisterhood. And so it's been an amazing year.
Thank you so much for sharing. I can't believe it's been a year. It feels like we were just recording this episode like yesterday.
Yeah.
And talking about all the things and our excitement and kind of like our expectations for our pageant experience. And so it's just incredible. I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad that we're here together and like doing this. I love it. The picture is like, I need to print that and have it framed in my house because that was a special moment too. Because I also think too, so that was my very first pageant ever. And for me, like you and I became so close and such good friends that the emotion in that picture is so genuine because I was so excited for you. I was like, this is amazing. And it didn't matter that like I wasn't getting crowned. It was like, my girlfriend Jaimee is getting crowned and she's worked so hard for this. And so I think there's something incredibly special with this pageant system where women can support each other like that and not feel like, oh, this is a missed opportunity or like I'm lacking. I 100% was not thinking any of that in the moment. It was just sheer joy for my friend for accomplishing something awesome.
Well, and I think in that moment for me, one, it was shock, kind of like, oh gosh, like I really have to do this. The other thing was like, oh no, like Kim, you would have been so great. And I think, you know, even throughout the year we chatted as you had your different experiences and I had a lot of personal things go on in my life that I almost gave up the crown multiple times where I was like, okay, should I pass it to Kim? Should I give this up? Should I focus on, you know, what's going on in my personal life? But, you know, that's been something that has saved me in a way. Like I felt like, you know, it was my time because the crown really helped me through a lot of these personal trials. And even though, you know, my reign wasn't what I expected, you know, I felt like there were a lot of things that I didn't get to do during my reign. I felt and I feel so blessed that I kept the crown and that I kept going because it supported me and my sisters supported me throughout a very, very difficult year for me.
I think that kind of segues really well into like our first question for the episode. But for listeners who might not know you or are new to pageantry and haven't met you here in Utah, who are you beyond the sash and crown?
Yeah, I love that question because I feel like even with the sash and crown, I'm completely myself. Like there were many times, and I feel bad, but like there were many times that I felt like the odd one out just because, I was the one in jeans, or I was the one, wearing my comfy clothes, or, I made choices based on what I wanted, not necessarily the image that people normally think of in pageantry. And so, there were times where I was hard on myself about that, but there were times where I was like, you know what? Like, this is who I am. And I think having that mindset throughout my entire reign was powerful in many ways. I think it inspired a lot of people that I wasn't expecting that to do, when most of the time I was worried what people were going to think, like, and it had the opposite effect. Instead of them wondering, why doesn't she look a certain way, or why isn't she looking like she could be like first lady material, right? Like, I was definitely, in a way, I was a people's queen. Like, I connected with a lot of people that, maybe I wouldn't have if I was all ritzed up and looked a certain way. I was completely me. So when, I took off my crown and my sash and I was doing regular life, or when I was in the studio teaching dance, like, I was still that same person, even when I took off the crown and sash and when I put it on.
I love that you consider yourself in like these interpersonal relationships with people who are interested in pageantry or learning about pageantry. You're like, yeah, I'm a people's queen. I'm approachable. You're genuine. You're so considerate and kind. And I think those are you just embrace these qualities that make people say like, hey, this isn't a facade or an act. This is genuinely someone who, when she's having a conversation with me, she's just like, wow. I remember over the summer when we were at the Utah Air National Guard wing, and we were doing events for two separate.
I think about that a lot.
And I think that's where you met Natalie Rawlings. She's Mrs. Brigham City. And it's funny because she's like my neighbor. We're both up here. And I think she's one of the sweetest and kindest people. And I love, yeah, she is. And I just love that her interactions with you and the other queens like led her to be like, wow, this is something I could do. I could try this. Because if you hadn't shown up at that event, if you hadn't been yourself, regardless of how you felt in that time or moment, like you might not have recruited somebody who's that amazing. And she is such a light. She's wonderful, lovely. And so I think that there's just so much goodness in being like, okay, I'm going to show up, even if I feel maybe like self-imposed inadequacy, or I'm concerned about certain things. And she's like, no, like she saw that and she was like, oh, I can do this. And she's amazing. I think so many other women, that genuineness is what makes the system so worthwhile and why so many people keep coming back.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I love that she shared that story on social media, because that day was a hard, hard day for me. I cried a lot that day, actually. I felt very inadequate. And I mean, there were other emotions that played into that. Looking different while representing the title was really hard for me. I was like, I don't look like my sister queens, and that's not a bad thing. It's just like I was really down on myself. And for Natalie to share that like, with me being in a t-shirt and jeans, that stood out to her. And I cried. I was like, Natalie, like, thank you for sharing that with me, because in that moment, like, it was really hard for me, and it was hard for me to continue, on to my next event that day. But, in the long run, when she shared that many, many months later, right, it kind of healed part of me. And that's the other thing that I love about pageantry is like, there are a lot of things that you don't see or don't know. And with pageantry, it gives you a voice, in a sense, like that sense of confidence to speak about certain things where, I felt like I was a confident person, but I have increased my confidence like tremendously over the past year. And I know, like, I'm really looking forward. I know this sounds crazy, but I am looking forward to, passing my crown, because I'm a different Jaimee than I was a year ago. And I don't necessarily need the crown or sash anymore. Like, it's kind of trained me. Like, it's like those were my training wheels in a sense. And now, I'm going on the two wheel without the training wheels, and I'm still going to serve, and I'm still going to connect and network, but it's a different feeling for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love how You just talk about the growth and progress that you've made. And I'm sure in some ways, like surprised you in terms of you're like, wow, I came out of this situation changed in this way, or maybe I have a different perspective, or maybe I feel so much more confident in these areas. And it's so interesting to hear you share when you're like, when you're first crowned and you're like, okay, what have I signed up for? And here's, I'm about to go on this journey. And then a year later, you're like, wow, the intentionality of God and his plans for my life and how this all mapped out is just beautifully done. And I love that. I love that you were sharing that part.
Thank you. Yeah, as I was writing my farewell page for the program, I had to, you know, I had to shorten some things because I just had so much gratitude, and part of that was gratitude for my Heavenly Father. And I say a lot of the time I'm grateful for this the choreography that God created for me, and that like He guided me as a leader, that I was able to follow his dance steps. And I think of that. Not, I don't want to be too dancey, but that's exactly who I am. Like people know that by now if they know me, like I'm all dance. And so I actually think of this painting that I have. It's of Jesus on water, actually, with a ballerina. And I love water. Like I'm a Pisces and I love like all that too. So it was like really cool. But this painting is of Jesus, reaching out and dancing with this dancer. And I look back and that's exactly how my year was. Like he danced with me the whole time and he was there with me. And I couldn't have made it without him, because there were many, many moments throughout the year that I just felt lost and in really dark places. And I wasn't sure how to be Miss Utah for America Strong, because, there is that expectation of you are representing not only the pageant system, but you're representing Utah. And even one experience that I had this past summer, like I was representing the country as well, because it was a World Folk Fest. So people from other countries came to Utah. And so in a sense it was even a bigger role. Like I was representing America, which was really unique for me. But I felt like, I couldn't have done it without my Heavenly Father and without Jesus Christ.
I think those are just such beautiful perspectives on it. And there can be so much pressure on being put into these positions where you're representing yourself in a different light and representing your state and representing the title and then representing your country. And you're just like, wow, like, am I equipped to do this? And I think that it's important to recognize that God will equip you if he puts you into those roles and those positions. That doesn't mean that it's not intimidating or nerve wracking or you're starting to question things in the moment. But I appreciate you sharing that perspective, because there's so many women who, even before they compete in pageants or they're looking at pageants, they're like, they've already counted themselves out. They're like, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that thing. So that makes me curious about, when was it kind of first planted in your heart that you wanted to compete in pageantry, and like what inspired that?
Yeah, so we actually talked a little bit about that on the podcast last year. And I think last year I kind of mentioned, Miss Congeniality, that I asked for the VHS when I was little. Like, some of the glitz and glam of it really caught my eye, because I've always been a dancer. I've always been a performer. Like, that's just who I am. And so pageants were just, another avenue, another performance in a sense. And as I got older, I felt like it was an opportunity for me to prove myself. That was definitely how I felt in high school when I did, small town pageants. And I felt like that was the case when I competed in the North Carolina, South Carolina for America Strong pageant. Gosh, 3 years ago now, 2.5. Gosh, it's been forever. But I felt like I was trying to prove myself. And there came a point between, me competing in a different system. I competed in the Miss America organization, just in like a local preliminary in Utah. And because I had aged back into the system, it was really weird. Like they had an age cutoff and then they opened it up a little bit more. And so I had aged back into the system. And so during that pageant, I felt like I was again proving myself. And then fast forward to, like 5 months later, where I was in a better place. I wasn't necessarily trying to prove myself to anyone. I had healed a lot. I had discovered things about myself. And then I decided, it was time. It was time to come back to this system. And that was, a year after I had, like a year and a half or something after I had already competed in this system in North Carolina. And instead of wanting to prove myself, it was kind of like I was at home with myself and I wanted to share that with others. I wanted to kind of just show that, this is who I am. This is what I've been doing. I want to do this on a greater scale, a greater platform in a sense, a greater stage, right? And so that's when I decided to compete here in Utah. And I'm so grateful that I decided because I went all for it. Like I got sponsors who completely sponsored my state experience, which was amazing. And I'm so grateful to them who, were my sponsors even before I won. And some of them continued with me as I continued on to nationals. And I've just felt so blessed that, even though pageantry before for me was about the show, was about the glam, was about proving myself, that I was so, in a sense, proud of myself that I had grown in such a way that I had a different outlook and a different perspective. And ultimately, I think that perspective helped me win the crown. Well, you've seen some of the darker moments too. I mean, like I would Marco Polo you and like tears and like things going on. And like I love that you're competing again in this system because you've seen how I've grown over the past year and what I've experienced. And like I can only imagine like if you were to win this year, what that would be like for you or really for anyone who wins. Like I'm so excited for whoever has the crown next. And I think that's why I just had this urge to recruit so much because I was like, I want other people to experience this, right? Like if you believe in something, you're going to share it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that when kudos to you for recruiting all these amazing women. Miss class is they're just so fun. They're such great women.
Yeah.
They are incredibly passionate about their platforms, just like the misses contestants
Yeah.
as well. But they're just so solid, and it's been so fun to get to know them. I swear, every time I've done this once, but like every time I've done this,
Yeah.
it feels so rushed, and you're like, wow, like she's awesome. I just got the opportunity to interview Sherry Kinder. She's our Miss Murray, and
Love her.
she's amazing. Like she's her personality and her authenticity and just her drive to help people. I was so glad that I had her on the podcast episode because like in the hustle and bustle of prepping for pageantry and honestly just how life is because everybody's already busy and then you're like, let me compete in a pageant in this. It was just an awesome opportunity to get to know her. And we're actually going to go cheer her on at her scrimmage football game this
Yeah.
weekend. But like I don't like our social circles, especially living in Murray, me living further north in Utah, wouldn't organically cross. But here through pageantry, you get to meet these amazing women all over the state of Utah, and you're like, wow. And not only that, but it's like a circle of women in which you're challenged and inspired and pushed, and you're like, look at like the circle that you keep. You're like, I have goals and so do all these women. And so we're going to keep being our biggest advocates and cheerleaders. And you see it, we just went to the Ypsilon Galentine's fashion show so we could cheer you on.
Yeah.
And I was also at Utah Fashion Week where you were modeling too.
Yes.
And so I
I'm so
think,
grateful.
of course, yeah. But it's just like no brainer. Like this was something important to you. And you're like, of course I'm gonna go and support her. And I think that is so refreshing in a time where I think it's very easy to isolate, pick up mean girl traits, or be like, how is this
Yeah.
serving me versus how can I serve others? And so, yeah, pageantry has definitely blessed me beyond that. One of the things that I wanted to talk about before, going back to, you kind of mentioned it earlier, and then also with like the Marco Polos and some of the more challenging times, and it doesn't have to just be with like your reign, but any of your pageant experiences. Like, was there ever a point where you almost chose not to compete or you decided to like withdraw or quit?
Yeah, I think in my past experiences, I don't think I ever had that moment of I wanted to quit, just because I did have a different mindset of wanting to prove myself. And I think there was probably some bitterness and anger in those moments of why I wanted to prove myself. But, leading up to state last year, I was excited. I was in a really good place. And so I never really experienced that desire to quit until I actually had the crown. We were getting ready for nationals and we had things to submit. And I had a lot of things happen actually right after I was crowned. So I was crowned like the last day in March, I think. And then it went straight into April, and a lot happened that April. And it's still, I'm grieving in ways still about some of the things that have happened in my life. But at that time, like, I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't want to let the state down. And there were many times where I'm all like, okay, do I pass the crown to the next person? Or like, who do I pass it to? Like, because you had other obligations as well. And so, it came to a point where I felt like I just had to do it. And I kind of was just doing it because I had to. And I think that affected my national experience in a way because I was still grieving. And I was still figuring myself out a lot after some things that had happened in my personal life. And so my nationals experience was amazing. Like, I loved it. There were some very spiritual moments during nationals that like I'm so grateful for. And I gained some amazing friendships. Like my Miss Idaho is one of my besties, and like even like New Jersey, like we'll call each other. Like that sisterhood carried me through nationals. But yeah, there were times that I wanted to give up the crown, even after nationals. To be completely honest, October was another dark month for me, and there were times where I was like, okay, do I just tap out? Do I just say I'm not going to crown the next person? Like, do I not even make it through the pageant? Like, what should I do? There were a lot of times where the crown felt heavy, but I don't necessarily think it was the crown. I think it was my life. But I thought about, if I got rid of one obligation, what would that be? And it kept turning to, the pageant, to my reign. And I just felt awful about it. Like, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to finish my reign. And I've grown a lot from that. I've grown a lot from just pushing through. And, looking back, my reign definitely wasn't what I expected. There were a lot of things that I didn't get to do. Like, I wanted to, go to legislature and go do things and make a difference because of my platform and what's happening in Utah, and different things that I felt like would be more impactful, right? Like, I wanted to go on the news and spread awareness about certain things, and I had the opportunity to spread awareness. It just wasn't in those like big grand things that we've seen from previous queens, like Natalie the year before me, and even Chelsea and Stacey. Like, they were very powerful in that way of like in the political scene as well. And that inspired me. And that's kind of what I wanted for my reign. Not necessarily that you have to have that, but that's what I wanted, right? And so looking back, it was really hard for me, like especially during nationals and in October, I was like, this has not been what I wanted. Like, this is not what I planned. And that's actually like the High School Musical song, right? Like, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I planned. Like, I wanted it to be a certain way and it wasn't. And that was really hard for me because it's like I'm getting to the end of my reign and like, what did I do? Like, what did I accomplish? Like, nothing that I had told the judges last year. It's like, there were some things that, yeah, I totally accomplished. But from, the outside looking in, I was like, what was there? And it wasn't until, I was reflecting about my past year and I had people reach out and like Natalie and other people saying, you inspired me. And there was a moment actually. So I had given a speech at the Dance for Life Gala this past year. And Dance for Life is a wonderful organization that's here in Utah and in Florida. I feel so blessed. I was actually invited to be a part of the board now that I'm giving up my crown, and I'm so grateful and excited for that opportunity. But I spoke at their gala, and that was a hard day for me too. I had moments of crying in my car. I'm like, how am I supposed to encourage people to, take care of their mental health? And it was a suicide awareness gala, and I was like, how am I supposed to tell people not to take their life when, I've had those moments like recently that I'm just like, it's so dark for me right now. Like, how can I share that? And I ended up, giving my speech, and I think it was exactly what it needed to be. But I was still hard on myself. Like, people would come up to me during intermission, they'd be like, thank you so much for your speech. Like, and I kind of felt overwhelmed in that moment. I'm like, I said, you're welcome. Like, tell me your story kind of thing. But it wasn't until weeks later that I was actually at a different event. I was at Daisy Day of Dance. It's a creative dance kind of experience, I would say, that happens here in Utah. And I was at that event, and I was just talking. I didn't even have my wow, my sash and crown. We should call it that. Do you have your crash? But anyway, my sash and crown, I didn't even have it on. I just had like a t-shirt that said Miss Utah for America Strong 2025. I was talking to people, and they're like, wait a second, you spoke at Dance for Life. And I was like, yeah, were you there? And the girl, she was like, I was. Like, your speech like really helped me. And I think that meant more to me than, the people after intermission, just because like I could see how it lasted. It wasn't just in that moment. And I think looking back, I am so grateful for that individual who told me that it made an impact, because I think that's really what overall, I think that's what I always wanted. It wasn't necessarily about going and talking to certain people or being in certain spaces, but it was more about that impact that I was leaving, and that there was a change that I was making. And so I felt so grateful and so blessed that, after the fact, I can look back and be like, yeah, it wasn't the impact that I thought I would make, but it was an impact that needed to be made.
Thank you so much for sharing. I thought that was so moving that you spoke at the Dance for Life gala. And yes, people came up to you in intermission, but your words were able to move and impact somebody in the future. And they were meeting up with you, and you're talking about it. And like, you're just like, hey, and like she was able to recognize you. Like that is like super impactful. And I know you were kind of reflecting, you're saying like, hey, and sometimes I'm working on, so I work with the military women's ministry, like Christian ministry. And one of the things that we're working on is this thing called Invitation Project. And oftentimes the concept of grieving like missed expectations comes up a lot, especially with military life. And just that was like the message that was kind of resonating with me as you were speaking, was that like we are allowed opportunities to grieve what we thought was going to happen and didn't. But like from my perspective, when you shared that, I was like, wow, like that hits that, like, hey, you changed somebody's perspective. You impacted someone in a positive way. They can call you out in a crowd and be like, remember when you said that? Like that moved me. And I think that like, again, we can go into any set of circumstances and be like, I'm going to be a mover or shaker. Like you had mentioned, like I did not do the things I told the judges when I won state. I haven't done that. I haven't had the capacity or bandwidth to do that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that God maybe course corrected you so that you could end up speaking at Dance for Life and reach this woman or reach so many people. And you might not even know the impact you've had on people, but just because they haven't run into you out and about in Utah. But yeah, they remember it. They remember that impression you left and how you made them feel. And I think that's what's incredibly important.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we forget that, even if we change one life, that's still a life. Like that's still a person that matters. And I think sometimes that can be clouded by pageantry, right? We're thinking that we always have to be go, go, go. And I think that's why it was hard for me. It was like, I'm not go, go, go. anymore. But I'm so grateful for that perspective shift, because it allows me to also help, the contestants now, and whoever is the next queen and the next queen after that. Like, I'm able to remind these women who are in these big roles, no matter what system they're in, that I'm able to, share with them, hey, if you just impact one person, then that's great. And you know what? If that person is you, that's all you really need.
In that vein, I'm curious about how has holding this title changed the way that you view yourself?
I love that you brought that up, because I was actually talking to Portia, one of the Mrs. contestants this year. She was also in it last year, and she's one of our good friends. But I was talking to her about some gowns, my state gown, my national gown, and actually the gown that I will be wearing when I crown the next woman. And I wasn't going to get a new gown. It was not in the plans, and I was just going to wear my nationals gown. But I had seen this gown and I had put it on. And when I put it on, I'm grateful for the opportunity that allowed me to try on this gown, because, it was meant to be mine. But I was like, what would it be like if I hadn't tried on this gown? But anyway, I was talking to Portia, and my state gown last year was very much me in that time. Like, it was royal blue velvet. It was kind of see-through up top with different beading and like a halter, and like my back was exposed. Like, I loved it. Like, I felt sexy in that dress. I just felt so good. And that's how I felt, at that time. And then, everything happened in my life, and I had been looking for the perfect nationals gown, and I felt like some of the ones that I had in place were just not me. Like, they were me, but the gown was wearing me. I wasn't wearing the gown. And I had found my national gown. I had put it on, or maybe I had seen it on the rack, and I was like, that is my gown. Like, it looks like there's blue feathers on it. It's the perfect color. Like, I knew I wanted that color of blue. So my nationals gown was exactly what it needed to be for who I was at that time. Like, it definitely wasn't a gown that you would say would win nationals. I will say that, just because it's not a color that people would normally wear. It's maybe the cut is a little bit different, but it was exactly what I needed. And it wasn't about whether I would perform well in that dress. It was about how I felt. And it was for me. It was a very selfish choice with that gown. So when I put this new gown on, I wasn't expecting, like, again, I had no intention of buying another gown. And I had put on this gown, and I just looked in the mirror and I was like, this was my nationals gown. Like, if I had been in a different place, a different mentality, emotionally, physically, even, I think that gown would have been my national gown. Like, it is a nationals worthy, I would say. And I put it on, and I was talking to the people who were there with me, and I just started tearing up. I was like, this is my gown. Like, this is me through and through. Like, the cut, the fit, it fit like it needed no alterations. Like, it just felt so good. And they said, we got it in 2 weeks ago, and we knew that this dress was for you. Like, you had to try it on. And I was like, well, dang it. Like, well, if that's the case, like, you knew. And I was like, well, shoot, I should get it. And they're like, it's the only one. And just the thought of having someone else wear this gown just made me sick. I was like, I don't want anyone else to wear this gown. And I'm all like, is this the feeling that you're supposed to have when you get a wedding dress? Like the perfect dress? Because like I've been wedding dress shopping before. Like I was engaged before. I have a wedding dress and I did not feel this way when I put on my wedding gown. So I was like, this gown, I was like, this has to be my crowning gown. Like this has to be my final walk. Like this is me through and through. And I was like, I am not leaving here tonight without this gown. And so yeah, that ultimately I love it because it gives kind of a nod to my younger self, that person who, wanted pageants because of the glitz and the glam and the makeup and the dresses and all that. And so, my younger self would probably be so excited, but it also gives, it shows my story. It shows from my state gown to my national gown to my final gown as Miss Utah for America Strong 2025. And I'm really excited because I've planned it so I can wear all three at the pageant. And so not a lot of people have seen this new gown, or at least they have and they don't know that it's the gown. People, when they hear this episode, they might know. But yeah, I'm really excited because that gown is who I have become and like who I am going into this next chapter of my life.
Okay, back to the dress. I got a little emotional when you're like, this is the dress, and I'm going to do my final walk in my crowning and crowning someone else in that. And I just kept thinking, like, what a special moment. And you were talking about, like, is this how people feel when they're wedding dress shopping? And maybe, but I think, like, in knowing you, seeing your reign, being friends with you, I think that this dress and you feeling so confident and beautiful in it is probably like commemorative of the year that you've had and how much growth in the experience. And truly, like, the dress is the rain. You're like, this is the beauty that came from everything that I've experienced. And yes, I'm crowning someone else, but I take these experiences with me so that I can continue advocacy, that I can be on boards, that I can do this or accomplish whatever you want. And so I think I'm very excited to see your final walk. I think it's going to be so beautiful. And I'm excited to see the dress.
Thank you. Well, and I will say you have seen the dress.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
So, yeah, people can do some sleuthing, but
I kind of want to be surprised. And then when I see you on stage, I'm like, that's the dress. I love it.
I'll probably cry because I've even watched my final video. So I made my final video and finished it the other day, and I downloaded it to my phone and I've been watching it every once in a while, and every time I watch it I just cry, and I'm like, this with the dress and the song that I chose, like I'm gonna be a boob. I'm gonna be crying. I'm gonna have to touch up my makeup for sure.
Oh no, I think people will expect that. Like it's a deeply emotional and moving year, and you're concluding this chapter but moving into something greater. And so it's like a metamorphosis. Like it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And but with that though, this dress, your experiences, all of that, what does your title mean to you personally, not just publicly?
I think I kind of touched on it already. It saved me in many ways this year. Like it gave me something to do when, I've kind of been unemployed in a sense for a while. I teach dance, but it wasn't full time, and I had to close my studio. Like last year, last year we recorded the podcast, and I was in my studio. Like it's a lot has changed, and my pet bird died. And if you're listening and you have pets and you have a love for them, like you can understand that. And so there was just a lot that happened that the crown in a sense gave me purpose when I thought my purpose was lost. And I actually mentioned that in my final video because I felt like, my platform is Dance with a Purpose. So I talk a lot about doing things with a purpose, doing, your extracurricular activities or, your hobbies or really anything, do it with intention behind it, with authenticity. And so I felt like when I had experienced all these different things, like I felt lost. I felt like my purpose disappeared. Like I didn't have, you know, a living thing to take care of anymore. I didn't have, you know, work in a full-time capacity where I just felt like, you know, what's the point? Like what am I here for? You know, and having this title gave me that again. It gave me opportunities to get out of the house, to get out of bed, to, you know, put some makeup on, to look nice, and to just kind of push through because I had to and I wanted to, but it was hard. And I felt like for me, you know, the title, again, I think it saved me in many ways. And I know that puts a lot of weight on the title, but that's what it was for me. You know, it gave me purpose when I felt lost.
That makes me happy. That makes me really happy. This is a little bit out of a left field, this question, but
Yeah.
what's one misconception that people have about pageant queens?
You know, you sent these questions, and that was one that I thought about, and there were three different things, but now that we're actually on the call and recording the podcast, I'm like, oh shoot, what were those things? But the first one that came to mind automatically was actually food. Like, I know that's weird, but I think people automatically think that, you know, us pageant queens will not drink soda or not have carbs or different things like that, where, you know, that's not true. Like at nationals, so I have celiac disease, so there's a lot of things that I can't eat. Like there's a lot of normal carby things that people have that have gluten, like noodles. I have to have gluten-free noodles, and you know, oatmeal like that I even have to be careful with. And so at nationals it was really hard for me. Like they did an amazing job. Like the Westgate, like, oh my goodness. I want people to win this title just so that they can have the carrots at the Westgate. Like those carrots were magical. I will talk about them all day long. But, you know, the staff, they made me my food, you know, special and safe. And at nationals, my blood sugar was a lot lower than I wanted it to be because I couldn't have like these desserts that the other ladies were having, and you know, some of the things that had those high carbs that would, you know, turn into glucose for your blood sugar. Like I didn't have that, and so I was dizzy a lot. I was weak during nationals, and like for me, I'm all like, I love food. Like, give me a gluten-free pizza and I will like eat that every day. Like, you know, like, and there a few weeks ago, actually, someone had mentioned, they're like, are you so excited to pass the crown? Because then you'll be able to get, like, you'll eat whatever you want. And I had two reactions in my head. I didn't actually say them out loud, but I had two reactions. The first one was, no, I actually can't eat whatever I want because of the disease that I have, right? Like, I would love to eat McDonald's fries again. Like, that's actually one of my goals this year is to go to Canada to eat gluten-free McDonald's fries. But the other reaction was, why couldn't I eat what I wanted, like throughout my reign? Like, and that was hard for me. And I think, you know, even us pageant women who are within this pageant industry, you know, sometimes we think of that too. Sometimes, you know, even in planning our slumber party that we have every year with the contestants, you know, in planning the meal, we were talking about, you know, different things to have because we don't know what the contestants would like. Like, are people not going to have carbonated drinks, or are they going to avoid the sweet that we have, or different things like that, where it's like that shouldn't even be a conversation. But you know, as women we bloat, right? There's things, but I'm like, we do that anyway, whether or not, you know, we're eating a certain food. And so the things that, you know, I've learned in my life and in my healing with my autoimmune diseases that I have, you know, it's not just about the food, it's about the other things that you're doing. Are you taking care of your mental health? Are you physically active? And I think sometimes that mentality, and I don't think it's just a pageant mentality, but I think we have that mentality of like, oh, I can't eat these sweets, or don't give me too many carbs, or, you know, I can't digest this one thing as well. And so I can't eat it at all because then I wouldn't look good in a swimsuit, or I wouldn't look good in a dress, or different things like that, where, for me, I'm like, that's our body. Like, our body is so fascinating and incredible. Like, I do have a new job, which I'm so grateful for, and it's in, the functional medicine world. And I love it because I believe in this, right? Like, I believe that, if you do take care of your mental health and you do take care of your physical health, and you're making sure that, no matter what you're eating, that you're, if you need those extra supplements to help with your vitamin D or your vitamin C, or, your magnesium or different things, like, I think that is even more important than limiting your food. And I think that's a big misconception that people have with pageants, and even in the dance industry. I think people will automatically think that as well. Like, you want the salad tonight, right? Like, you're not going to have these other things. And I think, that's something that moving forward, like, that was something that I wanted to do more about, talk more about during my reign. And this month, especially since it's autoimmune awareness month, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I only have, at this point, it's a week and a half left of my reign. But I was like, oh no, I want to share all these things and bring awareness to, these issues, or these, mentalities, or these ideas that people have. And, I was kind of reassured today. And I think it was Heavenly Father just kind of letting me know that, just because you're passing the crown and you're taking off your sash, like, it doesn't mean that the things that you want to advocate for and educate people on, it doesn't need to stop. And so I'm really excited for what my life will look like after the crown, because, these misconceptions that are out there about dance and pageantry and autoimmune diseases and what you're eating, like dietary restrictions, like that kind of stuff, it's like I can still do that. And if anything, I'm more energized to do that. Like, I have this newfound energy that, I didn't necessarily have during my reign. And I'm really excited to continue with that, and to kind of help people understand that you don't have to put these restrictions on you necessarily, but that you just got to know your body, and you got to figure out how your body works. And if you feel at home in your body, then that's all that needs to happen, really.
I'm curious if there was something that surprised you about being a Miss Utah for America Strong, or you think that other people would be surprised by.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this to a lot of people, but not a lot vocally or publicly. So maybe this is the first time that people will hear about it. But, we look at our system, and it's the Mrs. America organization. And so we have three titles, three national titles. It's Mrs. America, Mrs. American, and Miss for America Strong. And, that trickles down into the state level. So we have three state title holders. And from the outside, like social media, different things, it looks like these three titles are very connected, right? They do everything together, or there, a lot of planning that goes on together. And that just, at least for me, that wasn't the case during my reign. And I think it's different for every reign and every year, because, you have three very different queens every year. And so for me, I thought that I would do a lot more with my sister queens. Like, we'd plan a lot more, like, especially with advocacy. Like, we did a lot of fun events together. Like, we did parades and like some tea parties and different things like that. But there wasn't a ton of planning as far as like our platforms, like including each other in our platforms. Like, I think some, yes, like Charlotte, she had this amazing tea party at the beginning of her reign for autism. And Jessica did this amazing mom summit and like with me, I was so grateful to be able to share my platform with Dance for Life. Like, both Jessica and Charlotte were included in that. And so there were definitely moments, right? But I thought we would do more together, right? And I thought I don't know exactly what I thought, to be honest, but I wanted to be closer in some of those things, and that just wasn't our reality this year, like for us queens. And so that's something that, from an outside, people would be surprised to be like, wait, like you're not having like birthday dinners with your sister queens, or you're not going on, date nights. Like there were many times where I was definitely, the miss in the Mrs. organization. And I continually remind the contestants, like, this, like, that was my reign, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the next person's reign. Like Natalie, who crowned me, like, her misses are her bridesmaids. Like, we're part of her bridal party for her wedding. And so, every reign is different. And so I think that's something that even our organization, like Utah, is trying to do, is to just bring the Miss and the Misses closer together, even as contestants. Like, I'm super excited for our slumber party because there's some fun plans that we have. But yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing that I didn't expect out of the reign and out of the system as a whole, was that just that the Miss, definitely you feel like a single lady in a married organization.
I mean, I think you bring up some very realistic and like tangible, valid points that people might not necessarily recognize. They're just different perspectives and experiences. Like going through, even last year, my experience this year is a little bit different, but last year, like everything was brand new. Most of my family's from Wisconsin. And I also think that people, for me at least, people were able to see how I competed over the past year. And then now that I'm competing again, I've gotten so much support from my like back in Wisconsin, from both financially, ticket wise, everything. And I think it's just there's an aspect of that of like people don't know what they don't know. And if they're not familiar with pageantry, especially if like they know me, but now I live in another state, like everything is on the individual contestants' shoulders to like provide education and information and like this is what this is like. Otherwise, you kind of leave some of the misconceptions up for people to judge or not judge or whatever. And so part of that, at least for me, part of navigating some of those things could feel really lonely because I didn't have, well, obviously I didn't have a spouse, but I didn't have a significant other at the time. I didn't have family close by. And everybody's experiences are so different and unique, but same for the misses, like you can't assume what their experiences are like. And so
Oh,
everyone's
100%.
individual journey is so, so unique. And you're just unsure of what that might look like for someone.
Yeah.
But yes, but I will say, like, yeah, it's just, even from a state perspective, being a miss in a Mrs. organization is it's different. I will say though too, it's been some of like one of the coolest opportunities to gain so many friends that have beautiful, I mean, I have children, but have beautiful families too across the state of
Yeah.
Utah, and just getting to know them, and not just our Utah girls, but going to nationals and meeting people like I'm friends with Katie Wood, who her sister was one of the Texas contestants. And you're just like, it's pageantry is just a small world.
Yeah.
But it's just a great way to like, don't count yourself out if you are unmarried and you're older or you're a single mom or any number of things. Like, this is just a beautiful opportunity. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that
Yeah.
though, because
Yeah.
it is different. It's a different journey, a different mindset to go through, and it's just different in general. So I really appreciate that.
Well, and I will add, like, one thing that I loved, and I even told my sister-in-law about this the other day. I was like, I have loved, even though I've been kind of on the outside sometimes, I have loved observing Charlotte and Jessica and how they are mothers. I'm gonna get emotional, but like how they are mothers and how they are wives, and even observing their husbands and their children. Like, I've learned so much from them. Like, yes, I had my toolbox of like what I could potentially bring into a marriage or into motherhood, and I've just learned so much from them. Like, one time I was sitting with Jessica, I think it was before nationals, and we were just chatting about something, and her son comes in from football practice, I think, and she automatically gets up and welcomes him at the door. And I was just so impressed. Like, I was not offended that she like got up from our conversation. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I want to be that mom. Like, I want to be there for my kids. Like I have loved seeing both Charlotte and Jessica, how they navigate their lives and how they've navigated their reign. Like just because our reigns were completely different than the queens before, like I am so grateful, and I tell them this, like I'm so grateful that they were my misses. Like I wouldn't trade them for the world. Like everything, I said this, I think this was in my walk, and like one of my walks last year during the competition is I believe that everything happens for a reason. And looking back, I 100% believe that Jessica and Charlotte were always meant to be my misses.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love that. I mean, I know Jess and Charlotte pretty well because again, I competed last year, but people
Yeah.
might not. But when you like upon first impressions, they are both tall and beautiful and funny and vibrant and all the things, right? And so they're just a light. And then when you get to know them, they're not only a light, but they're amazing friends and they're funny and like they're so genuine and authentic. And I just adore those two ladies. And so I love that you share just the opportunity to watch them in their marriages and motherhood was such a blessing. Like I think that's so beautiful. And I just love that that is a unique Miss perspective in this dynamic of being able to be in partnership with your sister queens and they're going to pour just as much into you in that situation as well. And I love that. Okay, I got two more questions before we hit up lights. Okay. So we kind of talked a little bit about social media. But I'm curious how you navigated your social media presence. And sometimes social media can be a highlight reel, but also the potential to not just have a glowing social media presence, but using that for like advocacy and to keep that momentum going with your title and your platform.
Yeah, I think for me, I had to learn early on, the boundaries of social media. When you win a crown, there's kind of this expectation that you're gonna become an influencer. Like you have to be on like Instagram and Facebook and, be on these social platforms. And at first that was a lot for me. Like not necessarily like the things that I wanted to do. Like I had a lot of plans. Like I would save reels, like be like, oh, I'm gonna do this one, I'm gonna do this one. Ooh, I want to post about this. Like even during, the beginning stages of my reign, I even was planning on doing, a series where every Thursday or Tuesday, I was going to do like talk about it Tuesday or let's think about it Thursday, like, these conversations that I wanted to have on my social media platforms. And I had to learn early on that like I just didn't have the energy for that. Like I didn't have the bandwidth. And it got to a point where like I wanted to share a lot of the real authentic parts of me. And I think even early on, like there's a reel that I had made. It was like a trending audio where it's all like the girl I used to be in 2017. I hardly recognize her basically. And I had done a reel early on, I think it was in May, where I had showed that, in March before I was crowned, I was happy. I was, had my sock puppets for the lip syncing and then in the reel it switches to me like falling apart. Like I even remember that day. It was May 4th and I had a video of it because it was a Marco Polo. Shout out to Marco Polo, but like some of these raw moments, I was like, you know what, maybe I gotta share these because I'm not gonna be showing up on social media the way I wanted to, but I need to show up. Like I can't just, disappear, especially since, Natalie, she was great on social media. I mean, she's part of a social media management team. And I was like, I don't want to let that legacy down, right? Like I want to continue that part of her legacy and kind of meet those expectations, not just for the organization, but for myself. Like I wanted to do that. And so it got to the point where I was like, okay, I will take pictures or videos when I can. If I post them, great. If I never get to it, that's okay. Like, I think I finally mentioned the Daisy Day of Dance on like my Q&A that I had done like a month or so ago. Like that was the first time that I talked about it, but we did it way back in September. Like, there's still a lot of things that I didn't, make a grid post about. Like, most of the World Folk Fest that I did, you know, that was all stories, like it wasn't a reel or it wasn't an actual post. And so some of these things, you know, disappeared over time. And so and that was hard for me because I was like, no, I want to leave it somewhere permanent, right? So that people can see and go through and be like, oh, this is what Jaimee did during her reign. And I had to come to the point where I'm like, you know what? Like that's just not where I'm at right now. Like I need to take care of certain things, and I've reminded some contestants about that. I'm like, you know what? Like just because I was on social media a lot, you know, looking back, I was like, I actually did do a lot on social media, but I was like, you know what? That doesn't have to be your reign. Like you don't necessarily have to have that. And so I had to find that balance, and especially with the advocacy, like I did want to post more. Like I would have things on my calendar like National Celiac Day or like gluten-free day, or you know, with National Women's Day coming up or World Women's Day coming up on Sunday. I was like, you know, it's on my calendar. Will I do something about it? I hope. Like I hope that I have the energy and the bandwidth to do that, but like I have to give myself grace that, you know, it's okay if I miss that, you know, unless it's like a sponsored thing where, you know, me and a sponsor have decided, okay, this day I'm going to post, or, you know, if I have an event that I'm like, okay, no, I told them that I would do something, you know, that's a little different. But, you know, I even have like all these reels saved and planned and ready for pageant weekend, but who knows if we'll actually do them, you know? And so I think as far as social media, you have to have some grace for yourself, and you have to put those boundaries, especially in our organization. Like we don't have a lot of time, you know, you're married or you're a mom or you have a full-time job. It's like, this isn't a scholarship pageant, right? Like this isn't, you know, we don't have a lot of free time like college students do. And I say that because I was a college student, right? Like I look back, I'm like, wow, I actually did have a lot of free time like as a college student. And so, you know, it's a different dynamic as, you know, being in this organization. And so that's, I guess, just one thing that I would encourage contestants to do. And even in other organizations, you know, give yourself grace, because social media is one very small part of it. And, you know, like we said before, you might influence one person in person, and that's okay. And like if 100 people view your reel or something, yeah, that's not a huge view count, but that's 100 people who saw that reel. Like in real life, like if you had 100 people standing in front of you and you said the exact same thing, like you should be proud of that. Like, so what? You're not an influencer. You still showed up on someone's feed and then people viewed it. Like there were 100 views, you know? And so, you know, I was really proud of myself when, you know, some random reel that I decided to make, like the edit was totally bad. Like I did pretty good with my edits this year, but there was one reel, it was actually the Galentine's, where it was like, you see, you see Charlotte in the background in the first part, and then she's in the next part, and then I think Aubin was in that next part, but then she's in the background for the next part. It was just like, obviously it took some time to record this, like it wasn't like right after. So it was kind of like, it was kind of a sloppy reel, but that reel was my highest reel. Like there were 52,000 views on it, and I was like, really, out of all my reels? Like, you know. And so you just have to give yourself grace and like just realize that people are still viewing it. That doesn't, you know, doesn't matter the numbers, or doesn't matter what you're posting, and people aren't going to know you're posting plans. Like they're not going to see all the reels that you saved or the things that you wanted to do. And so I don't know, like looking back, I I give myself grace, and I'm pretty proud of, you know, what I was able to accomplish on social media.
I love that. I think that is such a phenomenal reminder. The idea of like, if 30 people are liking your photo in real life, like that would be amazing to have 30 of your friends be like, girl, fire, like you look so good, right? Like, how would I not feel amazing versus like, oh, I don't have 100,000 likes on this. So I was like, 100,000 likes is insane. Like 30 people in real life would be incredible. I'm like, that would make my day. And so we have kind of somewhat diminished that a little bit. Like we become a little like desensitized to numbers and stats and things because we want those high numbers. We want the influencer status. We want, the content. We want it to have that engagement so that we have like the benefits from it. But yeah, I think it's a really healthy perspective to keep that in check and understand and appreciate like, but this is the good that we did do. And just because it's not meeting mega influencer numbers does not mean that it's still not influencing people. Like we have 9 Miss contestants in the pageant. Like that's incredible. That's 9 women who are like, sign me up to do the Miss category in a pageant system where 2 women will also be crowned as the Misses. Like that's a big ask from women. And also for them to boldly step out means like they did. They found something encouraging in either your communications in person or online. And I think that's so positive. I love that. All right. Last question though, before we head into lights. So you're about to end your reign. You're about to do your final walk. What is the message that you want to leave with people?
I've thought a lot about it, and I think I kind of touched on it throughout all of this, but I think the biggest thing for me is just that I've been true. I've been true to my beliefs. I've been true to my decisions. I've been true to my reality. In the dance studio that I teach at, we actually talk about the 8 true traits of a dancer. And that was something that we started this year that, actually went hand in hand with my platform. And these traits, I'll list them. We start, the first month we talk about respect, and then we talk about being prepared the next month. And then it goes into enthusiastic, right? Like they build on top of each other. If you're respectful and you're prepared, you're going to be more enthusiastic. And then you're going to be more confident, but you're going to have those opportunities to be humble. And in all of that grows your creativity, being creative. And then you have the opportunity to be more authentic because you've been true, learning all these different traits. And then you have a greater opportunity to give because you've been prepared, you've been respectful, you've been humbled, right? And, looking back, it's like, yes, I was respectful. I was prepared at times. Sometimes I wasn't prepared, but that's where the authenticity comes in. And, I mentioned on last year's podcast that, one of my biggest fears was that the judges wouldn't see me as genuine. And, I actually did have one judge say that I didn't seem authentic. And that was really hard for me. Yeah, right? Like, it was like, wow. Like, I think in that moment it was just because I was nervous and maybe I tried to be a little bit more rehearsed. But I think that's one thing that, I wanted going into the reign, like when I competed, and that's something that I always want to carry with me is that I've been true. I've been true, my reality, true to everything that makes me me. And that, when I'm Miss Utah for America Strong, that's the same Jaimee that is going to be Miss Jaimee in the studio. And so that's kind of what I want to carry with me into this next chapter. And also that's what I want people to know of me. And I would hope that they do see that. And I think, people have mentioned that they see that. But that's something that I always want to continue and encourage others to continue as well.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing everything. It has been such an absolute joy to have you share your reign and your experiences in pageantry and what you've learned from this past year. I just love and adore you. I'm just so excited to have you back on the podcast a year later. And so, how we close out to all of my podcast episodes is that we do a round of lights. So, green lights are things you like that you advocate for, red lights are thumbs down, things that you are not going to recommend. So, you can take it away.
So I'm actually going to repeat the exact same lights that I had last year, just because I feel like I have they're very much that red light, green light that I still believe, right? Like I said, I'm very true to everything, but I think now there's just this different perspective, right? I had 3 green lights. One was cheer people on, and I fully believe in that, like support your people. And support people who maybe aren't your people, right? Smile to the stranger, give a compliment. I love when I'm in a random in and out and a girl's like, oh my gosh, I love your shoes. And, thank them. And I would be like, I love your pants, like, or I love your bow, like cheer people on in the everyday life. And another green light was just do the thing. And I completely agree. Like, know yourself, know your boundaries, right? Like, know your energy and what you're capable of doing at that time, but just do it. Just go for it. And then my last one, which is so funny. I guess what not funny, but like, wow, that my last one was healing. Like, I don't remember what I had mentioned during the podcast, and I think it was just because, I had healed a lot at the time, but this past year, 100% green all the way. Like, take time to heal yourself and don't stop advocating for yourself, whether that is with physical health or mental health or even spiritual health. Like, seek the healing, take time for healing. And I cannot shine that green light loud enough. Like, healing is so important. So with the red lights, the two were assume and being rude. Like, stop assuming. Like, and especially like this past year, I've learned a lot in my relationships. I've learned, don't assume the reasoning behind someone's choices. Like, you only see their decision, that final thing that they've picked, that they've gone with, but you don't necessarily see those choices that someone has, like those options, right? So don't assume ever. Like, that just, oof, that boils my blood, because I stop assuming. And then that goes hand in hand with being rude. Like, I've come to be very aware this past year. Like, I always thought I was an aware person, like spatially aware and, emotionally aware, but I feel like my awareness has grown a lot this past year. And I feel like, yes, there are times that we snap. There are times that, we do stupid stuff, right? But that's no excuse to not hold yourself accountable or hold other people accountable, right? Like, call them out on their crap. And so I would say, don't be rude. Just love, just cheer people on, just like be a friend. Like, you don't have to be besties, but, be aware that like people are just trying their best. Like, they're just going for their dreams too. They're just trying to make it through the day. They're just trying to heal. They're going through their things in life. And so just, I don't know, love, use that charity that Jesus teaches us about.
Jaimee, thank you so much for being on Highly Favored today. It has been such a joy. It's been an absolute pleasure seeing your reign the past year. I'm so proud of you, friend. You've done so many amazing things, and I love the way that you lead all these incredible myths and how encouraging you are. And we're all going through this pageant journey, and I'm just so incredibly proud of you. I'm so excited for next week. We'll see who gets crowned, but I also think that you've helped cultivate an environment and culture within pageantry where we all win when we help each other rise. So I'm super excited about it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you.